the war in Ukraine has been going for a while now and the personal cost continues to climb unabated. With these seemingly endless losses, comes the need to retain order and focus on the end goal, removing Russia from their homeland. For that to happen, we cannot have Ukrainian soldiers going rogue. Let's take a look. Thanks for watching, please drop a like and subscribe. We need your support and please do check out our link to Patreon. In this video I talk about discipline in the Ukrainian armed forces, new laws recently introduced to improve discipline and some examples of where certain soldiers have gone rogue. It's important to note, Ukraine's secret weapon thus far has not been some piece of expensive kit from the West, but rather their strength of motivation and their shared belief in their country's ability to win this war. This belief must not be allowed to crumble, and to invite ill discipline and loose lips will cause cracks to appear and potentially the end of Ukraine's most effective weapon. Without high morale and motivation in difficult times, we run the risk of losing the initiative, especially as it's normally your fittest and most motivated who start the war, leaving you with your less motivated to come in later. Soldiers going rogue are disease that spreads through a unit and eventually a whole army. So, you need to be prepared. Laws need to be put into place and things ready to ensure that your army runs smoothly. Recently Ukraine put in some strict laws that has been castigated by many who put Zelensky under huge pressure to veto them. But he has refused to do so, and the law strengthens punishment for wayward military personnel and rejects a petition signed by over 25,000 Ukrainians who argue it's too harsh. They forget that the country is at war. The key to the combat capability of military units and ultimately of Ukraine's victory is compliance with military discipline, Zelensky said in his written response to the petition. Ukrainian soldiers have stunned the world with their resilience and battlefield successes, withstanding a year-long onslaught from Russian troops. But among Kiev's forces, made up largely of fresh recruits lacking previous military experience or training, some are struggling to cope. There are those who have rebelled against commanders' orders, gotten drunk or misbehaved. Others, running low on ammunition and morale, have fled for their lives, abandoning their positions. Seeking to bring his forces into line, Zelensky in January signed into force a punitive law that introduces harsher punishment for deserters and wayward soldiers and strips them of their right to appeal. The law aims to standardize and toughen the repercussions for rule-breaking, improving discipline and the combat readiness of military units. Disobedience will be punishable by 5 to 8 years in prison, rather than the previous 2 to 7, desertion or failure to appear for duty without a valid reason by up to 10 years. Threatening commanders, consuming alcohol, questioning orders and many other violations will also be dealt with more harshly, potentially with prison time. Those who broke these rules in the past may have gotten away with a probation period or the docking of their combat pay. Those who lobbied in favor of the new law, such as the Ukrainian Army General Staff, argue it will make discipline fairer. Previously, because courts adjudicated infractions on a case-by-case basis, some perpetrators were able to escape punishment for serious rule-breaking entirely, while others received harsher sentences for less significant violations, according to an explanatory note that accompanied the new law. But soldiers, lawyers and human rights watchdogs have slammed the measures as an inappropriate and blunt instrument that won't deal with the root causes of military indiscipline, and over 25,000 Ukrainians called on the president to veto the law altogether in a petition submitted to the president late last year. The new punitive rules remove discretion and turn courts into a calculator for doling out punishment to soldiers, regardless of the reasons for their offenses, lawyer Anton Didenko argued in a column on Ukraine's Interfax news agency. This law will have negative consequences for the protection of the rights of military personnel who are accused of committing a crime and will reduce the level of motivation during service, an NGO, called the Reanimation Package of Reforms Coalition, said in a statement. This can carry risks both for the protection of human rights and for the defense capability of the state. Sadly, with the country in a war, discipline is non-negotiable. We have already seen how soldiers in a state of significant stress and panic can disrupt the national narrative or worse, give the enemy a free propaganda boost. One of the most classic incidents was a report in February when a Ukrainian journalist asked a soldier if the lifespan of soldier in Bakhmut was 4 hours. Not knowing how to answer effectively, he responded, "I think it's a little longer." Before you could say what the fuck, it was going around the internet and the pro-Russian forces were having a great time talking up Ukrainian casualties and how quickly they die. In fact, this type of story would have had an immensely dire effect on those men getting ready to enlist or join up, How effective would they be if they thought that their lives would last for 4 hours? National morale needs to be maintained come what may, and having people untrained or unprepared to answer the important questions by the medica can be detrimental to the direction of the war. Then of course you have the overabundance of cameras on the battlefield. Despite it bringing some truly incredible footage of combat, it has also given some horrific scenes of Ukrainian soldiers getting killed or maimed. This footage is often retrieved by the enemy and used in his propaganda. I would prefer that cameras are removed and that documenting the war stays with the professional war correspondents. We don't know what these cameras are capturing, and often the review is left to the individual soldier if they survive. Once again, I believe a singular method needs to be adopted that saves Ukraine from bad footage and the benefit it brings the enemy. Who can forget the Ukrainian soldier who, in a state of post-battle panic, filmed himself verbally attacking President Zelensky and his senior officers for the loss of his fellow soldiers? Whilst obviously very sad, losses in war are unavoidable, and gifting the enemy propaganda like this should be punished heavily. Voice your concerns via the chain of command, but keep it private. War is hell and the effects are extremely stressful, but helping your enemy is not an option. In the same way, when that individually captured footage finds its way onto social media, you have the creation of soldier celebrities, and this brings its own trouble, as they try to outdo and to create content. One of the most recent examples of this has to be Sergeant Major Valery Marcus. He has a very popular YouTube page that has over 519,000 subscribers and some very popular videos. He was also the Sergeant Major of the new 47th Brigade that has gained notoriety by leading a large portion of the initial assaults in the Zaporizhia region, using Bradleys. But then he felt it important to voice his opinion about his commanding officers. This public rejection of his command structure is totally unacceptable, even if it is completely accurate. You simply do not question your orders publicly where other soldiers in your unit can see and read all about it. It is a morale killer, and it spreads discontent, especially when you are perceived by your men as some kind of hero. They are listening to you, Valery, it's time to be quiet now. He is quoted as saying, "I'm totally opposed to the decisions that have been made regarding the deployment and development of the 47th Brigade. We haven't been allowed to develop the military unit in line with the values we have stated at the time it was being created. I no longer have opportunities to influence or rectify the situation. I no longer think it is appropriate for me to remain the brigade's sergeant major." He has been condemned by other non-commissioned officers in the unit as self-promoting, which does seem to be. He would also later be dressed down by the General Zelensky when, in one of his personal videos, he was seen removing his body armor after a particularly difficult assault. It is forbidden to be without body armor on the zero line, and the sergeant major really should know that. What is he teaching his men? In my opinion, Marcus is a fearless fighter, but his ego is clearly getting in the way of his abilities, and he risks losing his reputation in the 47th in favor of developing a social media presence, which is a damn shame for the Ukrainian people. Active soldiers should not be permitted to run social media accounts featuring combat footage or anything related to their jobs. There are simply too many risks associated with it. So, whilst these laws are a good start, I think more needs to be done regarding the current members of the armed forces and how their actions promote and assist the enemy with its propaganda efforts. In turn, these very negatively affect the morale of the Ukrainian people and those involved in fighting the war. The war in Ukraine promises to be a once-in-a-lifetime affair. Certain rights need to be curtailed to ensure victory. It's not ideal, but literally lives and freedoms are at stake. Why do you think that in most armies it's illegal to strike? This is due to the untold effects a striking army can have on the nation's security. The same can be said for voicing your concerns publicly. What do you think? Please drop a comment, and thanks for watching.